Marie, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm fine.
I want to welcome everybody to our podcast. I think this is number 6, and I've been told today I have to do all these introductions. Usually Anne-Marie does all this admin stuff, but today she pushed it into my side. So really important to us is that you click the like, and the more likes we have and the more followers we can get and the more momentum this podcast will get. And for any information about Anne-Marie's work or my work, there'll be little tiny pop-ups in between the recording. And you can also go down in the link below and check out our websites. And if you have any questions, you can just pop us a message. And yeah, and then we'll take it from there. Yay! Admin.
It's just I don't want to be the boss all the time. It's not my show, it's our show. So,
But you are the boss.
she knows that because I'm bloody bossy. Go on.
Tell them what you call yourself sometimes. She calls herself the Capricorn bitch.
I do, yeah, because it's like I'm very aware, like I'm sometimes because it's like don't mess about. Just either we were just talking beforehand, weren't we? How sometimes my frustration with clients is you've come to me for help, let me help you.
And I'm more the free spirit. I go, it has to flow and let them be, and it's their path. And yeah, so it's interesting that
yeah, you annoy me because you get on the higher spiritual plane, and I'm like, no, fuck
that. So yeah, free-spirited Sagittarius. So I wanted to share, or I wanted to get your feedback, or just have a chat to you about something that's come up really it's quite raw. I have been asked to walk the path with someone for end of life. And so since about 4 days now, the subject of end of life has been marinating in my little ADHD brain. And you know me, I go all over the show. And I've just been asking people that I trust and people that, for me, their professional background and also sort of their attitude in life is important to me. What for them is end of life and where does it start? So for me and for you probably, and for some others, the most obvious answer would be, well, end of life starts when you're born, because that's the end of your life.
Yeah.
And the majority of people
Well, you're starting the journey of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Majority of people, and in everyday life, you say that's where life starts. So that's sort of, and then a friend of mine sent me passages from the Bible, and so you can really deep dive into that. But for me, it was more the sort of end of life, where do we start the palliative end of life process? Because the question is always, am I killing my partner by not feeding, not giving fluids, and if need be, due to pain or discomfort, putting them on a morphine drive. And it's also really, really interesting that you have one situation, one human being that we're all assessing at the moment, and there are such different perceptions. The one perceives it as this is not quality of life. The other one is holding on to, well, he can still swallow, so let's feed and let's give fluids.
Yeah.
The other one just said, why didn't you leave him in the home? And so it's one situation, and depending on which, from what angle it's looked at and by who, so many different approaches.
It's like I can only kind of tell you from my perspective because I guess I've had like some significant losses in my life, but the main one was my mum because I was an adult human being who'd done a lot of work on herself at that point in time. But it was interesting because my mum had been an auxiliary nurse, so she'd nursed people to that point, to end of life, and was often there when people died, so she was very well versed in it. And she was very determined about how she was going to go out of this life. She wanted to be looked after at home. She didn't want to die in hospital. She didn't really ask us if we minded looking after her at home. It just was accepted as that was the way it was going to be, So that made all of us instantly have to learn how to be nurses, which I never thought I would be somebody who could clean and, do. I mean, I've gave my mum an enema in the end, and she was getting really desperate. Because that was one of the main things that bothered her, was getting backed up in her bowel. It really disturbed her. But I remember when it was getting to that critical point, and my sisters made the choice in the middle of the night once that the morphine by liquid form was not cutting it. We needed to call in the nurse. And when I went into her the next day, my mum was she was furious, absolutely furious that they'd done that, because she knew that once you're talking about injectable morphine, that's it, you're off and away. And so she was really angry, was my mum, and it took some talking down, really. Even though I guess on some level she knew she couldn't handle the pain, and it's like at some point somebody has to make that decision. She was really, really angry about it for a while. Yeah.
And there comes a point where, the question is, does one really have to make a decision, or can we just sort of leave it? But there are so many, there's a financial point of view. If one prolongs end of life for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, it can break people financially, because you have to have that carer, and you've got to have, you can't do it on your own all the time if you don't have the support around. And
well, I was just going to say that was quite one of the difficulties, because we were getting a lot of pressure from the NHS aspect of it, that we shouldn't be doing it all, that we should allow people in. And my mum was kind of dead against that. And especially because, you see, then you have men coming in to do it as well, which she really didn't want. You can't say no men can come in and do it. And towards the end, we were all so exhausted. We just had to accept that, because we'd literally, all of us been running on no sleep, and, it was hard work.
Yeah. So it's a really tricky one. And then, of course, quality of life. Is it quantity, or is it quality? Yeah. And if a human being opens their eyes, are they actually mentally in a state where they are interacting with you, or is it just a reactive opening eyes? So it is a really, really difficult one. And then from there, okay, where does end of life at that stage start? Then came my little rat race brain yesterday, and I thought, well, and that's something that we just discussed before we hit the record button, is it quality of life if you have that codependency, or if you have that OCD pattern that is actually taking away so much quality of your life and hindering you from, excelling or stepping forward or moving in any direction. Yeah. Is that life quality? Yeah. Or if somebody, in my case, I work a lot with people who are in narcissistic relationships.
Yeah.
So is that quality of life? So that subject, that one sure thing in life, which is death, it's the only sure thing in life that we can rely on, that will happen. Nobody wants to talk about, and definitely not about quality of life if you then expand it to that part of your life. And some even say, it's not death, it's passing over. Then you go into that whole spiritual Christian realm.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm at the point in A Course in Miracles. I think I was at lesson 141 this morning, but it's all been about this, about we are not a body. We identify as being a body, and we're not a body at all. And when you identify with the body, that's when it all becomes about prolonging the body and supplementing the body, and the body is ill, and all of the rest of it. And it has also been about that we tend to think of death as salvation or release, don't we? We tend to, so many of us there's almost a relief to dying, because we've had such a horrific life, or not had the things we wanted, or whatever. But it's that at what point do we embrace that we're already saved, isn't it? And it's a very hard thing for us human beings to embrace the idea that this life that we like to look at as struggle and pain and doing without is actually heaven right now, kind of thing. That's the struggle, isn't it? And we do tend to think of death as release, and especially like when people have been through a lot of dementia, oh, and people try to tell you that, don't you, as well, that's your consolation was, well, they'd already gone, you'd already lost them a long time before that, hadn't you, that kind of thing.
And it is, some of my clients do perceive it that when the dementia patient has come to a point when there is no more recognition and there is no more speech and there is no more reaction on a lot of things that we sort of react on in daily life. They say, well, they're actually like living dead people. And then is that now then end of life? Then the question, then the question arises in my head, well, why not introduce end of life care then? If everybody around thinks that they're not there anyway and they're just being kept at home or in a home, when I go to frail care, sometimes I think this is not life, I saw yesterday a person being bound to the bed.
Yeah.
I mean, what part is that still life? Yes.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine said this morning while we were walking the beach, and I asked her, and she goes, Nadia, there's two gods. There is the God, the Almighty, the Lord, and then there is the money God.
Right. What did she mean by that specifically?
Well, money rules. Money.
Right. In terms of end of life care and
generally,
and inheritance and the rest of it.
Inheritance, end of life, or staying in a narcissistic relationship where you're actually literally dying every month or every day, even.
Where you literally suffer. It's transactional, isn't it? You're giving away the opportunity to have love in order to have security, aren't you, really? Yeah.
And then it's about the money. We have the house together, or we have the business together, or the assets are in his name or in her name. So there again, and I found it quite interesting, and I had to nod, saying, yeah, there is the God, the Almighty, and then there's the money God, and it's an interesting, which even when I speak to Christians or people who have the Christian faith or other faiths, let God do his will, or it's God's will and God will guide you and all that. And then I'm like, well, okay, that I can understand that. Yes,
but we forget that we've got ourselves into these situations, don't we? It's like God's not there. This isn't God's fault. This is our series of things that we've chosen to do that has led us to this particular thing.
And also, if we would let nature, say, if I put it in different terms, if we would let nature do its thing, then a lot of people, then when they cannot feed themselves anymore then they will slowly but surely shut down, and the body knows how to die in an absolute perfect way. Yeah, but it's our intervention then that makes it into not God's or nature's gift.
Yeah, I mean, my mum was really strictly Catholic as you can get, but she always said, if I have a stroke, do not revive me. I do not want to be stomach fed. I don't want, and because she'd seen it firsthand. And motor neuron, which I guess some countries they call it ALS, don't they? That was one thing she was absolutely terrified if she'd have ever got that, because she said that there was nothing on earth like that if you had to go that way, that those were the terms, even as a Catholic, that she would not prolong life in those circumstances.
And then you have so I'm asking everybody needs to answer this question at the moment. So I went to lunch with a dear friend. It's sunny and we're just having a bit of lunch, and then it was like
you brought death up.
I brought death up. The part of Dignitas, the organization in Switzerland, where they
I've got another tale I could tell about that. Go on, yeah.
Where they do offer end of life. the process is about 3 month process that you have to go through. Yeah. But that is also a discussion for end of life, you know, especially for my dementia clients. They actually allow people with dementia to be assessed and to be able to choose end of life for themselves.
I think that might be, I don't know, I think this is gonna, that one will be very definitely a lot from country to country. I know, like, from my friend Pauline, who had, I think I've told you a little bit about Pauline in the past. She had all manner of health things. I mean, you would wonder how she was still stood up, really. You know, she had lymphedema, she had chronic bowel disease, COPD, you know, the breathing thing, just anything and everything you could ever think of, whole body problems, and terribly banged up feet that nobody else in this world would have managed to walk on. So she actually went down that route, or tried to go down the Dignitas route. She went as far as speaking to people in Switzerland. She was trying to get a doctor on board here. It would have entailed a solicitor. She had one doctor on board, then another doctor said, no, you can't because you'll be prosecuted. So what it seems like over here at the moment is they allow you to have that idea that this is available to you, but actually when you try to put it into place, you're not going to be able to do it.
I have to, no, I have, it's not like, so in England, it's not, because I inquired for a client
Well, it's like she would have needed somebody to go with her, and that person would have been open to prosecution and stuff.
But the guidelines at Dignitas are very, very strict, yes. So you have to have an incurable disease and no more life quality. And there it becomes tricky. So we know that dementia is an incurable disease. So you have to get that assessment and all that right at the beginning, where you're still corpus mentis, because the assessment is like that. And you have to make that decision in a time where you're still corpus mentis as well.
Well, yeah, she was, but I don't think she could even get anybody out to her, a doctor that would come out to her. And I know Pauline, and I know she would have done a million phone calls. You know, she wouldn't have just taken it from one person. She was a very determined lady, but no matter what she seemed to do, she couldn't figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, there is, you know, and I find that the protocol it's very strict, but I think it just keeps it in into relation, because it then, you know, otherwise it becomes like you know, the plastic surgery, long distance flights, you know.
Yeah.
Commercial.
Going to Turkey.
And I think that's so I'm really glad that Switzerland and Dignitas keeps it very very, very tight. But there as well, you know, what as you just mentioned, where is that end of life point?
The decision,
I think it's so individual, and I find it such a difficult subject to talk about. I'm don't get me wrong here, but I'm quite liking it, because it's sort of, you know, it's giving me the opportunity to talk very factual and very
sometimes it's better, isn't it, if you just deal with something logistically rather than emotionally, isn't it? Yeah.
And you know, when you do work with people who are in a narcissistic relationship, where you're seeing that their body is shutting down, their mind is shutting down, their physical appearance is shutting down. So it's almost like it looks like the person is dying, but it's so emotional, this emotional attachment and the dependency and the sort of self-esteem that has been crushed over the time with this other human being in the relationship, you know, where it's like so toxic, it's almost impossible, even if you word it very factual, in out most of the time. So it's a really, I think for me it's a really good subject to ponder on and to marinate in and to contemplate. And you know, also if you look at medicine, the opportunity we have with medicine to prolong life, where do you stop? You know, again, there comes you know, where does a Christian start letting medicine come in, and where does a Christian say it is God's will? So I will take the subject up with my Bible studies next week, because I want to know, you know, I want to see where they stand.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think we've had this conversation before. I sometimes think I sometimes think we're very different, but it's like when you've been through an awful lot in your life and you contemplated ending it all a few times for yourself and found your way out of it, you start to get almost a little bit blasé about death because you spent a long time thinking about it and worrying about it. And by the time you come out the other side of it, it's like, there, well, I'm not going to worry about it anymore. It's like you've exhausted the emotion of worry. It's like I remember when I went to go and write my will when I moved up here. I thought, well, I better have a will in place just in case anything happens, that something will happen to the house money, whatever, from the house. And she's saying, well, and I'm like, well, you can be the executor. I'm not really bothered about any of my family being made. Like, quite literally didn't really trust anybody to be my executor. And I thought, well, they've all got their own lives. They're all set up. They don't need my little bit of money. And so I chose like who would get it. And it's like, well, what do you want to happen to the funeral? And I went, not very much, really. I'm not bothered. And I think there was that there thinking, what's this girl about? Because it was like, well, I don't mind what happens. I don't want a fuss. I'm not bothered about a funeral. I don't want, anything that's going to cost all that much money. And, like the people that I want to get the money from the house, I'm not bothered about them sending me off with a fancy funeral. And I guess like at that point, it was that thing of, well, my body is just my body. I'll have gone. I'll be okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
And it's when you talk about it at the dinner table or in a conversation, then it's easily said, oh well, when it's time, then I it's okay to stop eating or to put it on a morphine drive. And but when you come to that moment that you have to say yes,
I think I'm just going to go sit in a field when I know it's. I'm going to go be like Gandalf or something. Just go sit in a field somewhere and wait for it to happen.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
my plan.
And I find it's. I mean, you've had my mind's not going in all directions. You've had euthanized dogs and pets. And I mean, I know that, when I look at my little Master Henry lying next to me here, I'm going, how would I ever? And the vet already told me it's going to be a really difficult decision. And I can talk about it and I can prepare myself and I know where I'll bury him and I've done all that. But I know that when the time comes, because the question is, are we playing God then? Yeah. And we are making a decision over life.
Well, the difficulty for you is, like you say, when you've got the narcissism aspect, or where there's a lack of love or real caring, because how do you navigate that one? Because it's hard enough when there is love and caring involved, but how do you make the decision when there isn't love and caring involved, and somebody may have an advantage to be had by somebody going earlier, than planned or whatever, isn't it? That's your difficulty, isn't it?
Exactly. That also comes in. I mean, this is such a crazy subject. It's like a never-ending story. And in the end, it's everybody has to decide. Coming back to where before we pressed record, I'm there to offer tools and perspective, and I can put the facts on the table and the options, and I can then let the other side decide what, and then for me to accept what they have decided and walk that path, even if it's not what I think might be a better option, or I would do it differently, or I sort of present everything on the table, and then my clients decide, and then no matter what they decide, I walk the path with them.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot.
It does come down to a choice has to be made. You can't just sit in the middle, can you? Well, you can, but that's likely to lead to suffering, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, they don't have to make a decision for my sake.
Mm-hmm.
I just encourage that we all, I mean, you know how it is. When you sort of ponder about a decision, it get bloody uncomfortable at some stage.
Yeah.
And you're like, the longer you wait to make a decision or to make that phone call or to, make that decision, whatever, it gets
I mean,
it.
one of the things I
it
found
once
hard with my mum is it got to a point with the nursing team, and because you get like free supplies and certain things when it's end of life, and I would just like every time my mum had soiled herself, which she might have only been going a little bit at a time properly to the toilet towards the end, I would clean her and I would change that pad because I didn't want her sitting dirty. And then the nurses would come in and go, "Oh, you're running out of these things too often." And it's like, no, it's like, I can't leave my mum sat dirty. I don't care how many of these things I use. But then, like, as time progressed and every time you cleaned her, it was clear that you were hurting her. And that was the only sensation that seemed left because at that point she was pretty much the way with the fairies, whatever you want to call it. And she only really registered pain and discomfort, and then you get
and
a
you
little
see,
moan or a little something or other.
and for me, that is for me a good time. When discomfort is, we have the sense that only discomfort is registered.
Yeah.
When no matter if it is the declining brain capacity or whatever that makes it in the body, that only discomfort can be registered and shown, shared in whatever way, with the face or with cramping
Yeah.
or moan. I find even if the swallowing is possible, and even if you are able to give fluids and that is for me a point where, for me personally, Nadia, as I sit here now with the experience that I have, even if it would mean stop feeding, that would be for me the point of setting a morphine drug.
Yeah. I think when it comes to the point where you're talking about things like feeding being difficult and toileting being difficult, I think that is kind of, isn't it, really where you're at? I mean, I remember like, because I kind of persisted as long as I could with wetting my mum's lips or just syringing fluids down. But I remember like putting my hand inside her lip and it was all dried out. And I thought, oh, I remember thinking she's dying from the inside out. She's already, she's died. She might still be here, but she's, yeah. And towards the end, my mum was doing little things like she would just go in a very like childlike voice. It was really kind of emotional and plaintive. She'd go, "I want my mum," or sometimes she'd go, "I just want my dad," like a little kid. She'd be like out. This was really towards the end, and you'd literally just occasionally she'd say, "I want my mum," just like that, like a child would. Yeah.
But we say that people who die, they have these, some people call it hallucinations, or they have dreams, or they can connect to some, I think people can connect to different realms then.
Yeah, I was just telling her, "Look, mum, if you want to go to your mum, it's okay. Or, we're ready, we're okay. If you want to go to mum or dad, it's all right." That's what I was saying.
They often have then conversations, or they have these death dreams, yes? These
Mm.
dreams before they die, where they're still able, when
She
they're
might
able
have
to.
been seeing other people and she was saying, "I just want my mum, I just want my dad."
Don't want you. Don't want you. Just want me, mum.
That's what she might have been doing. Had enough of you in life, you can go away. She probably had some Irish relatives coming in wanting
Yeah, very, very interesting subject. And, I felt the sort of heaviness now as we were talking, and it's very serious. And I was thinking, gee, what a subject to talk about on a Saturday afternoon.
But it is important.
But it is, and there's a lightness in the being too, and it's a relief for me because for me too, I mean, we all need to think about it, yes. And where and how, and I live in South Africa. It's very, very, everything is very, very different here than in Europe, where it's very, very regulated. And where do you want to, and how do you want to have that process? Do you want to be at home? Do you want to be in a home? Yeah,
It's a weird one for me at the moment. You see, in the situation I'm in, quite honestly, and I mean, I know my nephew James in Japan cares what happens to me. But other than that, I couldn't tell you anybody who would be bothered right now what happens to my body, which is quite a thing to say, but it is true. Well, you might, but you're far away. You know what I mean? There's nobody boots on the ground that is going to
It's only
handle.
a flight away.
It's what?
So it's only a flight away. Be careful. Careful.
I'll have to amend my will to put you in it. But you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
no
no,
good,
I
it's
get
no
you.
good me getting hung up on that and getting sad about it or anything because it's just a literal fact right now. I mean, things might change, but yeah, if
It's
something were to happen to me tomorrow, I mean, I wouldn't be discovered for a while until like a client knocked on the door or something. But yeah, it's a very real thing that I live with, but I don't allow it to bother me.
But on the other hand, isn't it also, can we not sort of change our mindset there or change a train of thought or our attitude that, I have, yeah, that family is a little bit more than we think family is. Yeah. Because I mean, I don't have anybody here either.
Mm.
I've got people that I know, I've got my friends, but everybody has their own life. And you've got to have like the best friend, like the bestie who would,
Yeah, I think sort of death is one of these things where you might
yeah.
it's too late because you're dead in a way, but the people who it's probably the people that you least expect that are the ones that will step up and handle that kind of thing, that you never really thought you could ask that of in life, I think. I think it's
I'm not so worried about the after death. I'm worried about the pre-Passover.
Yeah,
The
I know what you mean. Yeah, I'm not doing that bit. I'm just going straight to the field. I'm going straight from physically fit and well to just sitting in the field. That's my plan. And if necessary, I might like just take some treats and a bottle of vodka if necessary, whatever. When I feel it coming, I'm just going to do it like I live in a movie or something. I'm not going to do the whole nursing home, or I might just take a ferry and jump overboard. I won't be a problem, put it that way. I think it's like I spent, because like I spent a good lot of my time in life feeling suicidal in the past. I've thought it through from the thread to the needle, and the times I thought that I would do it, and literally the only thing that stopped me from doing it was that I wouldn't want anybody to find my body, and that was a real, well, it's true. It's a literal truth, I wouldn't have wanted to do that to anyone. I think I've come up my whole life trying not to inconvenience anybody when you
I want to kill myself, but I don't want to inconvenience anybody.
I don't want to traumatize anybody, you know what I mean? So yeah, I don't it's a funny one. Who knows? But I don't I think I've done sufficient work on myself that I just think what will be will be. It's not anything I can do anything about. And that's the thing, is really we all spend way too much time in our lives worrying about things that we can't control. And that thing of trying to future pace and predict the future based on your pain and hurt and suffering and what's gone on in the past and all of that. And it really is about, oh, it comes back to that, doesn't it? At what point is there no life left, really? At what point are you not living? And that can be hard to judge when somebody seems like they've had a lifetime of suffering or lifelong illness or lifelong ill treatment or whatever it is.
Yeah, then say, for instance, you and me now. I mean, it's a choice. In the morning, if I do have that terrible slump down, what if this was my last day? That's what like one of my key little tools at the moment. What if this was my last day? How would I spend it? And
Yeah.
listen, I mean, you and I talk almost every day. There are moments where it's not I'm beyond sticky, but then it is, what if this really is my last day, which it can be. And then people, oh yeah, all that sort of hypothetical. No, it's facts. This could be
Yeah.
my day. I mean, that's not hypothetical, and it's not spiritual, and it's not woo-woo either. It's
Well, that's
as
it. You hear young people dying all the time, don't you? It's a literal just fact. You could just go out of the door on any random day and just something happens, just some stupid
and
thing happens.
I think that life ends where you decide not to live it,
Mm.
even if it's something mundane like taking a shower and all that, or schlepping yourself to, I don't know, to church or to the beach, or eating something. And it's just that sometimes it's just that, but then you're still you're still choosing life.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you've got people like Wayne Dyer and like Louise Hay and
Yeah.
people like that. And I think it was even like who is it, Esther Hicks's husband that died relatively young, didn't he? I guess, and I guess people question, oh well, they can't have had all the answers, you know, because I don't think Wayne Dyer was all that old. Was he in his 70s?
He was only in the 70s, yeah.
Yeah. But I just think, and Louise Hay, obviously, a bit, I don't know as much about the others, but Louise Hay had been very, very ill, hadn't she? Younger and radically overhauled her diet and brought in the affirmations and completely switched up her life, didn't she? She died in the 90s. But I think when you've done a lot of work on yourself like that and you've investigated the whys and the wherefores and all the rest of it, it's like, is it a decision that you're just ready to go, isn't it? So you just go. It's like that literal thing is, I think I've done what I was here. I think I've learned what I was here to learn. I'm ready. I'm ready for a new adventure or whatever it is, isn't it, really?
And I think that's my aim, sort of, that I can get into a space where I can, I see people die in fight and flight, and they take an inhale and then
Yeah.
they pass over. And then I see people pass over when
And
they
when,
inhale and exhale, and then they just sort of,
yeah.
and that's
And when
that.
you when sorry to interrupt you, but when you get those ones where it's like that, do you think it's a moment of realizing all the things they should have, would have, could have?
No, I don't think it's that, but it's like, look, I don't know. I mean, I haven't had the,
That
I haven't
suddenly
had,
everything comes clear or something.
it's, this is just what I imagine. If it's that moment of death that suddenly hits you, that now it is, there's no more exhale.
Mm.
And people who are at peace with themselves and they've had their, if they've done their amends and they've cleared all the majority of family shit and issues, and they've thought about death, and they've sort of marinated it, chewed it,
Mm.
digested it. But they are just they're very patient, and they
Mm.
just in peace, and their breath is there's it's just more, it's accepting. And I think if you have the acceptance in that moment, that could be a bit of a
I
and I
think
think that the time before, I do see that the frustration, I should have, I could have.
yeah.
People never ever ever regret anything that they've done.
Mm.
Never. There's this immense space for acceptance at the end of life, and knowing that it was good, whatever they did, even though in the moment it might have seemed
Mm.
to be off track. But people do have those regrets. I should have called that person. I should have made amends. I should have taken that trip. I should have had a dog. Those things,
Yeah.
those things, those
I should
things
have just did the house less and got out more.
should have left the dude,
Well, that was my mum during she wouldn't even let my dad sit with her towards end of life. Somebody would come out and do the local priest would come and do a little house mass for her, and she kind of grudgingly let him attend, but that was about it. She didn't, she just didn't want that nonsense of him pretending to grieve her, really, when they'd had such a bad relationship, really. And I think that thing, like, well, some people might find it weird, kind of what I've said about going off and sitting in a field, but I think it is that thing with me that I'm okay with what I've learned in this life. I understand everything I did wrong. I understand what time I wasted. I understand why I did it. So while it's never going to be nice dying, and you'd rather do it in a peaceful way, I do think there's going to be a lot of acceptance for me in that I'm all right with this. I'm okay. I know what it was all about. Whereas a lot of people don't die like that, do they? They die with a lot of bitterness, resentment, guilt, the rest of it.
Well, what is
So I don't know. It's an answer. I don't know if there's an answer. There's not a
no,
one size fits all answer in any sense,
no,
because
that's
it's
not.
what people are involved, what the person's
Yeah.
the experience that person has had throughout their life, the experiences those people have had throughout their lives. And
it's also, the religion and the faith and the financial means and the opportunities and the possibilities and the logistics and all it comes together. But for me, it was really good to hear sort of, yeah, to hear your point of view, because I know you and I have discussed this in our private chambers. And I hope that some people, yeah, get like food for thought.
yeah,
And the work that you and I do is for me a sort of preparation for the end of life.
well,
Yeah.
it's like, what do I still have to left to work on? Where am I still getting hung up? And it is that thing, isn't it? Which kind of people should bear in mind, and we've kind of touched upon it before. Is you kind of, if you do get dementia or whatever, you want to give yourself the best case scenario of what is you're going to be outliving in your head, reliving in your head, don't you? And it's like the more shit you've dealt with in your life and sorted out, surely that must mean that if you
I,
do get dementia, that hopefully you'd be in a slightly more peaceful place if you have processed some stuff in your lifetime.
I definitely see a difference between people who have processed a good part of their life and have lived like honest to themselves, truthful lives to themselves. The frustration and the agitation and yeah, is much less than people who haven't done that. So definitely, so they must first go and sort themselves out with you, and then
And then book in for you. We have to
they also have to wait a bit.
a two-step process. Transform your life first, then get your call in with Nadia to schedule your end of life.
I think we should stop it on this note.
Please like and subscribe. Don't forget, book your free call now to organise your death.
Okay, I really think we're going to do a time out here. Time it out. Thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, hopefully it's given people something to think about. And it is really, and it's like my frustration with people that say they want help, they pay somebody for help, and then they fight against that help, or they don't just trust that person. They don't just give you that space and let go of the preconceptions and just allow you to help. Because I think that's the thing for me, because I've lost a lot of years, and you probably feel like that as well.
Yes.
That is like you just want to get hold of them and think, fix it now, and then move on with your life. Move on
Comes
with
the
your
airy
life.
fairy.
Move on with your life while you're young, Don't
Let
waste
them
any
be.
time. We're here for a good time, not a long time, and all of that.
We all have our own paths. I've had enough people telling me 20 years ago, 30 years ago to wake up. Just took time. And
Yeah, but I think that's the thing is they should trust us over everybody else because I think we've boiled it down to like the nubbins of what matters really. And I'm not saying there isn't other people, but I'm not interested in working with people over a long, long time. I want them to get sorted fast, and I think you'd be the same. Get your plan in place fast. Don't torture yourself thinking about everything and everything. Just make some decisions.
and I think what makes you and me unique, well, that's where you and I connected over a year ago, is that we work from the heart.
Mm,
And so I think I know that's what makes it different to work with me. And when we started working together, me as a client, I felt safe because I felt that, and you sort of portrayed it, and in your voice and in your intention and in the capacity that you were present in between the sessions, is that she's definitely not doing it for the money, because it comes from,
no, yeah, yeah,
that's what makes you and I different.
yeah.
Ka-ching, ka-ching, I would say.
Say that again, I love that.
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Very good. I love that. It always makes me laugh when you say it on a little voice message. It's really good. But yeah, so everybody out there, if you've enjoyed this today, please do consider subscribing, liking, sharing it with somebody you think might find it valuable. We show up and talk about all kinds of things, don't we?
Okay.
But that's bye from me, Anne-Marie, Charmed Life Therapy, and Nadia at nadiafredericks.com. Everything's in the description, links to book free calls, etc., etc. And just like Nadia said at the beginning, if you've got any comments or you want us to reply to anything, just drop a comment below. We'd love to hear it. All right, thank you. See you later,
Bye.
Nadia. Bye bye.